Okay. It's time to address the elephant in the room. Come here. Come here. So, I'm not here to create any wars, okay? Moro moro, and welcome to Culinary Role-Playing. My name is Walter, and I'm glad you found me. This is the second part of Culinary Gaming's Ultimate Fantasy Tier list. The first part can be found from the top right corner, right over there. If you find these videos worth your time, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot. I might have a little bit more spicy takes on today's video, but I am always really keen to hear another perspective. So please leave a comment down below. Lastly, I am in the works of creating my first supplement for Dragonbane, Adventures in Delmara. Quacken Slappers Extracurricular. I'm still figuring out the right release form for this project, but I will leave a demo of the supplement down below. The demo includes one extra School of Magic for the Dragonbane spellcasters, new kin, new monsters, and also an animal form spells for Animism School of Magic, which I think it really needs it. And of course, there needs to be guns, so gunpowder as well. But now, back to the video and into the ultimate fantasy tier list. What we have here, Shadow of the Demon Lord. I think if you want to play a game, don't get offended, but it's basically like 5e, but it's fixed. No, it's the 5e rules without the burden of the Dungeons and Dragons, the license, and the burden of the history of Dungeons and Dragons. The biggest downfall of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is that it tries to cater in many different audiences. It tries to desperately hold on to its license and its past, and it has been morphed so many times that it has so many rules that are unnecessary and they shouldn't be there, but they have been there before. I think the best word for me how I feel about 5e, the system lacks commitment. For me, it's like there are other systems that can have this like middle ground of crunchiness, gaminess, and roleplay, and they do it better because they don't have the baggage, as you might say. But yeah, Shadow of the Demon Lord is definitely like more dark fantasy, heroic-ish fantasy, but it really like doubles down on character creation choice. Every character always picks at least like 3 different classes, and overall like the rules are much more linear. You only use d20 and d6s. Yeah, it's overall like really smooth game. It would be better in my list if you could modify it a little bit better. The monster stats could be a little bit more clearer. As a GM, I really love a system that I can create creatures on the fly. I don't want to be ready to every encounter that the characters may face because I don't know what those encounters are. I really don't like to create like a ready narrative and which has like all the different possible outcomes where the players might like go into. I really enjoy more of a like discovering the story with the players as a GM as well. So that's why I will put Shadow of the Demon Lord on B tier, which is still really solid game. Then we have Ryutama. Ryutama is actually a game I haven't actually played it before. I would love to try it. I have read the rules and I really enjoy the traveling aspect. Really this aspect of not having like this huge major campaign, but actually characters having like a beginning and the end of the journey. It's the single adventure and they have a mission and they can complete that mission. And there are so many games where you can't get that feeling, especially as a player. Like when you are playing these kind of epic campaign games like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, like Pathfinder, like Fantasy Age, like 13th Age, and all these other like level-based games where the character usually like just can become stronger and the like mechanical wise the character arc just like keeps going. So it's really interesting to have a game that it's written inside the book that this is your adventure, this is your arc, and here you are finished with the adventure. And I think that's really important to have those sweet adventure games with the beginning and the end, and like usually a satisfying end. So yeah, that's why I really would want to play it sometimes. Oh, I thought this is gonna be chill, but oh my god, there are so many games. Next we have old school essentials. So back into the OSR. Oh, definitely. Well, I enjoy the OSR style of play. It's basically closer to a board game, but also it's much more roleplay heavier than other like fantasy systems, because you have only like your basic stats and you have the one class, and I think that really emphasizes the role play. You have a role in your group that you are fulfilling, which is, I think it deserves to be out there with the other games, and it's definitely its own experience, where Knave lets you kind of design your own place in that adventuring group, and you are like equal. The old school essentials and OSR overall like really makes you make the decision like, who are you in this group. The A tier, at least, it still has some weird wonkies from the past, but if you play it as it's meant to be played, it works well together. It works well enough, like all the roll to see if you get lost, or roll random encounters from the dungeons, and the reaction roll is amazing. Like you are not meant to be fighting with every creature that you come across. And also like the rewarding system, that you only get XP from the gold that you gather. It really creates this like next level meta game with the players. And I also think like in a very healthy sense, OSR games are much more like GM versus the players mentality, where like players can become almost paranoid inside the dungeons and try to like poke everything with like 10 feet poles. Well, that's why they are there. You have to approach it with the right like attitude for the people to really enjoy it, because the character death is there, it's possible, and you don't want to make this deep 3 pages backstory character and then they step into the dungeon and they step on a trap and they die. So yeah, but A tier, definitely. I enjoy it. It's really specific. I wouldn't play it like exclusively all of the time, but I wouldn't probably play any game exclusively. Why would I? There's so many great games. But definitely when I'm feeling old school essentials is there, definitely. But let's be real. Everyone who plays OSR don't just play one game. They play at least 3 games. Like you take little bit of rules up from here, you take the base from here, like you do that. That's the point of OSR. Next we have RuneQuest. And RuneQuest goes to the list of probably never play it. And I love basic role-playing system. I love Call of Cthulhu, and I also really like Magic World. And I have played Mythras, which is basically derivative from RuneQuest. The 7th edition of RuneQuest is, yeah, it's really deep. And like I have said before, I usually want to create my own worlds in games that I'm playing, and it takes so much time just to, as a player, to like create your whole family backstory, because it's all about your family, it's all about the community you're from, and it's all about like getting the abilities from your cults, and it's a lot. And I really appreciate the game in a sense that the people who play RuneQuest will get amazing stories out of it. Like, I have no doubt about it. But like I said, there are 41 games here. I just can't find the time. I probably never have the chance to play it, but it's really cool game though. It's a lot. If you want a lot out of your games, RuneQuest, have a read. It's a lot. Next we have Mörkborg. Heja Sverige. Got to appreciate the style. I know it's like how the book is laid out is really like, I wouldn't say it's that difficult to read. I think it's really readable, and you have now the bare bones editions for free for no less. If you want to like check out the rules, the player facing system is really nice. It's really nice for solo, but again, it's like really, well, I want to put it on S tier, definitely, because it also has great lessons on like how to design a game. It's really not afraid to be in its own thing, definitely, and it has created this kind of cult following, rightfully so. Yeah, Mörkborg, definitely. It's again, it's a vibe. You have to have the vibe to play the systems. When you start playing Mörkborg, you start playing Mörkborg. You don't play any, maybe I should play a fantasy system today, or maybe I should play a... No, you are playing Mörkborg when you are playing Mörkborg. Quest. Quest is a game that I want to give an honorable mention, definitely. I will probably, as like a personal game, I will probably put it on maybe C tier, but listen to me, hear me out. Quest is a really good game for if you have like a friend group of maybe 10 or 12, or maybe they have never played RPGs before. It would be almost impossible to run any of these games mentioned before, maybe Mouse Reader, but Quest is simple enough. You only use one dice, you only use d20. You can fill out the rules even more, that you can give like 3 abilities to each character, and it's just like you can have this kind of very simple adventures and focus on the storytelling and still roll some dice and get some fantasy experience out of it. So even though in my personal tier it's only C, but like objectively I would put it on probably on A or B tier, like at least. It is really, really good if you have people who might not have the ability to learn tabletop role-playing games. If I would want to like play tabletop role-playing games with my grandparents, for example, or people who might not have the proper foundation to play any other role-playing game, this is a game that you can easily run for anyone and they can get some enjoyment out of it, and it's really easy to teach, and it's really flexible in a sense that you can also like run it to a big group. You only basically need one page from it with you, which is the dice resolution table. You can make all the enemies on the fly if you want some adversaries in the game. High thumbs up and stamp of approval for this game. Check it out. Next we have The One Ring, which I will put on B tier. This is the other game that I have not played yet. I think I will also put it here. Love to play, hate to GM. And why? Just the scope of the world. I really don't feel like I have enough knowledge to really like run it myself, but I would love to play it. I would love to be a player in a One Ring campaign. Definitely, I that would be like really cool. But the knowledge that I have from the Lord of the Rings, I wouldn't dare to touch it as a GM. So that's why I will also put it there. Love to play, I would hate to GM it, because I would feel like I would fail at it. Next we have Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands definitely goes into the A tier as well. Like if you want to play a hex scroll and you have no idea how to run hex scrolls, you don't know how to make maps, you don't know like how the hex scroll procedures should work, this is the best beginner hex scroll game, which gives you everything you need. The rules are really good. It has the old school vibe, even though it's not like old school rules. The aesthetic is really old school. The characters are like really grounded, and it's built for open world adventure or hex scroll adventure. You have base building, you have foraging, the whole package. There's nothing to add. It's a good game. Try it out. Next we have Tiny Dungeon, sorry. Tiny Dungeon, I think the tiny system, it has great ideas, definitely. But like implementation of those rules, I will probably need to put it on C tier. And that's because if I would want to run as like a simple fantasy game with like maybe younger audience or people who are not that into role-playing games or are new into role-playing games. On today's market, there is so many other great options. Tiny Dungeon system, it's fine, and I love the idea that you have like these basically like feats, how you build your character, and then you have your like base, which is your like kin, and it's like a nice package, but the packaging is maybe not the best, and it could be maybe tidied up a little bit more, and maybe I just wanted a little bit more out of it. And it's not a bad system. It's definitely not a bad system. If you really like want a simple fantasy adventure, it's there for you. But for me personally, there is like so many other fantasy rules light systems that I can run to many different kinds of groups. So that's why it's only C tier. Next we have Kevin Crawford, Worlds Without Number. Oh boy. Like, if this would be a world building tier list, you all know where I would put it. S tier, like, without a heartbeat. There's nothing to compare to any other supplement to world creation than what Kevin gives you basically for free. It is sickening. When we are talking about the rules, I really enjoy why I don't have Kevin Crawford's Scarlet Heroes in here. I don't know. Scarlet Heroes, like basically anyone who plays like OSR or like D&D like systems solo, they all at some point try Scarlet Heroes, which like really tells about the creator of the game. But if we are now strictly talking about Worlds Without Number, I would also probably put it on C tier, because for me it has really great ideas. I love the world of being like this pocket dimension. I really enjoy the implementation of the spells, that they are this massive, really like Doctor Strange kind of world altering spells, but you have only few of those. And I enjoy the idea of the focuses of the feats, foci, but like for me it feels a little bit like somebody's homebrew thing. Like if Kevin would come here personally to run this game for me, I would be like, okay, dope, let's go. But as a like rule system in itself, I think it really has too many bells and whistles, which I understand because it tries to stay in the lines of the OSR, and it has some added stuff in it. So that's why it's a little bit, sorry Kevin, it's a little bit messy. But I also understand why it's messy, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But in my personal list, that's why it's on C tier. Then we have White Box. It's like White Box. Again, great distillation of the rules. Like great job of getting rid of all the extra like saving throws, like the weird saving throws, which I understand why they are there. There are history why the saving throws are the breath attacks and wands and stuffs and that. But I think if somebody wants to get into OSR and they want like a simple start, one book, White Box is really good for that. It gives you all. It's like, again, like really really nice, calm and collected rules of what you can do. It's not quite in the level of like old school Essentials or Knave for that matter, but like I really appreciate, like I still use White Box sometimes in my solo adventures if I just want inspiration in like to some creatures. And White Hack and White Box work really well together if you want to like have a fantasy adventure using White Hack. Basically all the creatures that White Box has, you can just throw them straight away. And if you want to give like spell scrolls to your White Hack people, you can just pick the White Box spells and just give them, and also the magic items. So it's really, this would be an S tier supplement for White Hack, but as a game itself, it's really solid B tier. Some water and let's go. Okay, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Come here. Come here. So, I'm not here to create any wars, okay? And I would love to hear your arguments on the comments. And it might be because I have played this game so much. Because I have played this game a lot. But D&D goes to D tier. D. And it's simply because it was the first game. Like, for many people, it probably has been the first game how they have started tabletop careers. It's just a bunch of rules that have not been implemented that well. And there are some great ideas in those ideas, definitely. But like, especially when you study at OSR and you see where the game has come and where the game is now, and you see like between the edition and edition and edition, like where the game has been. Like, we first have the first edition, which came from the tabletop wargaming roots, from the chainmail and such. And then we have the second edition, which tried to, well, we had like the BX, and then we had the advanced version, and then we have the second edition, which was like the, for some people it started to be the downfall at the end of the second edition, but the beginning was definitely like the start to be the golden age, because then you got all the rules, you got all the adventure supplement, and it basically became oversaturated in a sense that you had so many things you could add into it. And here it started to like grow out from its original roots. It wasn't like this dungeon crawler anymore. It was, the second edition started to be the point where it started to be like this heroic fantasy. Then we get into the third edition and 3.5, which was like this, here your character gets like a bunch of abilities and a bunch of stats, and you can basically lose at character creation because the builds were so specific, and then you created these monsters against these players, and like that was the min-maxer stream right there. That was the like the ultimate min-maxer stream. And then we get into the fourth edition, which was like nowadays people are start to appreciate it, but at the time it was like we were just getting World of Warcraft, and Wizard of the Coast was like, yeah, maybe we should make this more like a video game, because people seem to love World of Warcraft, so maybe we should make it like a World of Warcraft. And it was a terrible idea at that time. And then came 5th edition, which is like this unholy morph of 4th edition, but still it was like, no, it's more like 3rd edition, but it's simpler, so it's like originals, but it's like they just took a bunch of stuff and they still like desperately tried to make it Dungeons and Dragons. And on the first glance, yeah, it works fine. It works okay. Like, it still has this kind of minimaxer's dream, but it doesn't have the support anymore. So it is like this very build heavy game, but it's really also really loose. And I think that's the combination that's really like grinds my gears. I have min-max players and they can break this game so easily. Like, so easily. I have a total player who has basically a musket. Level 12, they can one-on-one Ancient Red Dragon. Every like balancing is out of the window. My state of mind as a GM has to be, how can I outsmart my players? How can I try to put them in a really tight spot? It's really adversary game, for me at least. And that's why I really like have lost my taste in it. And that's why for me Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is in D tier, unfortunately. And now, to balance that out, my favorite fantasy RPG, Dragonbane, S tier. Dragonbane, it's also a really simple game. The perfect balance of crunchiness, player friendliness, GM friendliness, ease of use, narrative tools, still like this kind of grid-based combat if you choose to have it. It has just taken all those, like, it doesn't necessarily bring anything revolutionary, but it takes those mechanics that has been there and like just perfects them. Character balance is really good. Like, you start out as a capable hero. When the game goes forward, you still are a capable hero. You just like attune your abilities and become a little bit better with them. That might be the only downside, for at least for the player's sake, that it's not like this. You don't get that level up endorphin rush that you get from like some level based games. You can up your skills, which can be like really passive, and then you can have the heroic abilities that can work as like as a milestone upgrade. So you kind of have like a synergy of both, that your players have those little doses of like they can better their skills a little bit, and you can give those major level ups when you think it's fitting into the story. So yeah, it just gives so many tools for GMs to run a very similar feel of like heroic fantasy campaigns, but it doesn't go into that on like high levels that I need to know exactly what my characters are, what are their weaknesses, so I can abuse them to even have like a relative challenge for my players to go against. And it's so much lighter to create your own monsters, create your own like kin, create your own professions, create even your own skills. The game has been laid out in a way like here you can do whatever you want with it, but it still gives a really good solid base, just like White Hack, but now with a little bit more flavor and a little bit more like specific genre in mind. I feel like White Hack and Dragonbane are quite similar in that sense. That's why Dragonbane is the favorite fantasy role-playing game right now, S tier.